Shalom, Gabe Greenberg here, Rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel in New Orleans, Louisiana. With you again this week, studying parshat hashavua, the weekly Torah portion, parshat Vayeira, with the great commentary of the Netziv, chapter 18, verse 27. Abraham is arguing, pleading, imploring God not to destroy the cities of Sodom and Amorah if there are a certain amount of good and righteous people that can be found within them. First, Abraham argues for 50, and he's successful. And he's now going to argue for just 45. And his introductory line is very beautiful. Hine na hoalti ledaber el Adonai. I want to speak again before you, God. Va'anochi afar va'efer. I am but dust and ashes. A very poetic phrasing, and has been interpreted widely to mean and refer to different things. Rashi firstly says, Anochi afar va'efer, that kvar hayiti ra'ui liyot afar ve'efer. In my life, I am deserving already to be dust and ashes. Dust, I should have been killed on the plains of the battle of the 4 and the 5 kings. Ashes, I should have been killed and died and burned in Nimrod's, the evil king Nimrod, who threw Abraham into the fire. And in both times, Lule rachamecha asher amduli. If it weren't for your merciful mercies upon me, God, I would be dead already. So according to Rashi, afar va'efer, dust and ashes, are a reference to these two pieces of Abraham's past. And Abraham is saying, it's a reference saying, God, you've already done so much for me, so permit me to ask another thing. The Gemara, Rava, in Masachet Sota, a well-known take on afar ve'efer. Bischar she'amar Avraham va'anochi afar ve'efer zachu banav l'shtei mitzvot. In the merit that Abraham referred to himself, humbled himself in these terms of dust and ashes, his children, the Jewish people, merit 2 special mitzvahs. That of efer para va'afar sota, the ashes of the red heifer, which would be used ultimately to purify the Jewish people from a certain type of tumah, a death-level ritual impurity, and also the dust of the sota waters. It would allow the Jewish people to fulfill a different mitzvah later in their history, which involves putting dust and dirt into water. So that's Rava. And another take in the Gemara, this time in Chulin, God says to the Jewish people that even at times when I am granting you greatness, atem mamatin atzmechem lefanai, you nevertheless humble yourselves before me. And the example given is, I gave gedula, I gave greatness to Avraham, and yet nevertheless he says, va'anochi afar ve'efer. He nevertheless came to me and dubbed himself dust and ashes. The Netziv, in his commentary, I think tries to work together these 2 midrashim in the Gemara and brings them together in a nice way. Says the Netziv, when Avraham comes and says, Anochi afar ve'efer, Hishpil et atzmo b'shnei atzamim nivazim halalu lekavana miyuchedet le'inyan. Avraham is coming and is humbling himself and describes himself in these 2 ways, which both speak to one general idea. And listen to what the Netziv does. He says that afar, dust, is a reference, signifies a future offspring. So the Netziv doesn't say this, but we know that Avraham was shown the dust of the earth and said, your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. The Netziv doesn't say that, but I think he is alluding to it. He says that, right, everything comes from dust. which biologically may not be the case on some level, and that was a belief in Chazal. It's unclear if the Netziv is referencing that biological understanding, but he says, look, we know that everything comes from dust. Adam comes from the earth. All of creation originally just came from dust. So he says, afar signifies progeny, but doesn't come from anything. There's no yichus, there's no origination, there's no parentage with dust. So dust signifies that I come from nothing. Afer, he says, is the opposite. Afer has a backstory. Ashes were something that were destroyed, but they also signify no future. Nothing can come from them. It says when you try to plant in ashes, what comes of it is very weak and lacking. So Avraham Avinu says, I am dust and ashes, to signify that like ashes, don't look to what will come out of me. And like dust, don't look at what came before me. Nothing and nothing. It's just me pleading with you. And I ask just for your mercy, which is a very beautiful idea. That Abraham is saying, I have no merit in this. It's just about you, God, being good to me. I ask for your kindness. And then Netziv concludes by saying that by humbling himself like this, God grants the Jewish people these two mitzvahs that were referred to by Rava, namely that of the red heifer and the sota waters. And so he connects to that midrash, and he then connects to the second midrash I mentioned by saying that those two mitzvahs are representative of Gedula, of greatness of the Jewish people, which is a reference to the second midrash. And they represent the greatness of the Jewish people in ways that he outlines. So, very nice. The Netziv is aware of these extant midrashim and weaves them into his commentary by noting that afar ve'efer is Abraham's way of saying, I come from nothing, and don't look at what my children will do. Hashem, I come to you and I plead with you for mercy and kindness in this case. And this can be a lesson for all of us as well. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next week.